Okay, so here we are with the Hour of the Wolf Posse fully assembled. And yeah, this one was challenging in a few ways. So to start things off, this one ended up actually having quite a few more mold lines than I had originally anticipated. You see that big one right there going along the side of Ghost Wolf's leg? Yeah, you couldn't quite see that one very well while it was still on the sprue, but once you get it clipped off and took a look, yeah. I still have a good amount of cleaning to do on that, especially on the texture there on his calf. That's one's going to be interesting. Not so much on this side. Other than that, he's a pretty simple model to assemble. And honestly, he was, like I said, he was the easiest one. Next up, we have Hawkeye. Again, not too bad. She does have a little bit of a lean. I may go back and try to even her feet out a little bit. There's a few little bits on there to clean up still. The main issue I had with her was her hand, specifically the one holding the bow. There's a small nub, for lack of better term. I'm sure there's a more technical term for that on Hawkeye herself, and a small insert or a small gap inside of the hand here, specifically the wrist, for the two of them to sit together. Apparently, during the casting process, that small gap in her wrist didn't quite form properly, so I ended up having to sit there and make the hole a bit bigger, just drill it out a bit with the knife, so it would actually seat in there properly. Honestly, that was the only real issue I had. Her quiver went on without an issue, and she was ready to go. Next up, we have Moonswift. All right, now I learned a couple of different things that will be very helpful for anyone looking to get this posse. First things first is, normally I would say look at the instructions, but the instructions for her aren't all that great due to one particular point, and that's her foot connecting to the broken totem there. There's actually what looks like to be a bit of sprue on her foot, and that actually connects to a hole in the totem there, which is how she's supposed to sit in. If you look at the instructions, it looks more like her entire foot is supposed to go into that hole, and that's not the case. I, before realizing any of this, cleaned off all of the sprue bits that were still on her, including the one from her foot. So I had to sort of improvise a solution, since there's not a whole lot of material there, so you can't really just, drill out a hole and get a pin in. That would be super fiddly, and my hands are just flat out too big. So I had to sort of improvise something. I don't know how well it'll work over time. I really expect that Moonswift will break off her base multiple times in the model's lifespan. Hopefully I can figure out a better way to do it in the future. Another thing to note is you will want to put her arms on first and then her head. I tried putting the head on first and then the arms, and just the way that this is, just the dynamic pose that she's in, makes that incredibly difficult. As the way I had her head on first, the ponytail was just a little bit over her shoulder, and I wasn't able to get this arm on. So I had to break the head off, put both the arms on, and then put the head back on. So when you are assembling Moonswift, leave the what you would think is sprue on the foot for her torso, and put the arms on first. Don't do what I did. Next up, we have the Spirit Walkers. These guys, I'm not sure how much of this model changed from the first edition, but there we go. Yeah, I'm not sure how much of this model changed from the first edition and the first molds, but I did run into a couple of things. First off, The connection points to the sprue are pretty chunky on them, so expect to have a lot of cleaning. You may still end up with a few gaps. I have a little one right there, and I have a few more on the other one that I'll show you. Let's see. Were there any mold? Weren't a whole lot of mold lines on this one. I have a little bit to fill there with the jaw because that jaw was a separate piece. This one wasn't too bad. This guy, on the other hand, took a bit of extra work. You can see I didn't clean it off quite as well as I thought, so I have a fairly substantial gaps to fill in before I can get him primed up. Yeah, this one you'll hear, another one, because I said I had to clean off a good amount of material from the sprue to get this one on, to get the arms and the legs on, and I apparently didn't quite clean off enough for it. Other than that, though, went together pretty well. Last up, we have the hunting wolves. So these ones have, both of them have a separate jaw piece, which is a lot smaller than the ones for Castrum Pollux. So if you have some difficulty with those, get tweezers or a magnifying glass or something. Yeah, this guy here went together pretty well. One thing I definitely will stress is, do not glue the wolf to the base until everything is assembled. You can get away with holding off on the tail, but do not glue the wolf to the base if the jaw is still off. I had some issues finding one jaw, and I had to dig around a bit, so I decided okay, I'll go ahead and glue the wolf on the base. I can find the jaw later. No. Don't do that. That was for this guy specifically. I was able to get it pretty close enough. Like I said, I have fairly big hands and big fingers, and this is really fiddly and really small to get into. A little bit of a gap there that I can fill in. Other than the jaw, these guys went together great. It's just those things are really, really, really small. And if you're not careful, they can honestly look like a piece of sprue when you're hunting around for it and crawling around through the carpet, wondering if you dropped it or if it broke off at War Cradle or what exactly happened to it. Not a fan of the separate jaws. So there we go. This is the fully assembled. I still need to clean it. Hour of the Wolf Posse. Go ahead and stay tuned. Hopefully 1.09 will be dropping soon. I did print out like 4 or 5 sheets of stat cards and got them sleeved up yesterday. And the last 3 times I did a fairly substantial number of cards like that, we got new updates very soon. So fingers crossed, this is the gaming equivalent of washing your car and causing it to rain the next day. So until then, take care, guys.